Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are merging the brands, and I am breaking out the old Free the Bird shirts, and I have the delusions of grandeur of a 16-0 season and being able to actually go to the Super Bowl in Tampa. But we're going to do baby steps here as we get into week 2. I will be in Houston up on the roof. I'm assuming that Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson will look like little itsy-bitsy peas down on the field from the moonshot down there at the stadium. And this guy knows all of that. He calls all the action for the Houston Texans. He is the voice of the Houston Texans, and working from home and working from afar and wondering whether there's going to be a season and all of that. And lo and behold, Marc Vandemeer, so good to have you back on. We are zooming like everybody. And I guess the one thing that's happened through all this, you used to just call in. Now I get to look at you and look at the Texans. If I could just smell the barbecue from the parking lot that I'm going to be missing this week, you know?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I can't wait to smell that smell, but it's not going to be there. You know, it's funny because the Texans actually had a drive-through watch party for the Chiefs game. They brought cars. It was like a drive-in movie, and they had a big stage. The cheerleaders performed, and they had the Deep Steel Thunder band, and they had all this other stuff
Was
going
there
on.
That's all. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, they did. They had
Okay.
tailgating. It was pretty cool. They distanced everybody. And being at Kansas City, you know, they had fans there. So they had a parking lot that wasn't full, and it was kind of spaced out a little bit more than usual, but the smells were there, man. Walking into Arrowhead, you know, that's one of the best places to go in the league for that. And I wanted to stop and like have a few whatever they're having before I went in, but obviously we had a job to do. So it's really interesting to see how life is right now in the NFL and beyond, of course. But now we're in the NFL season, so here we go.
Well, you mentioned Arrowhead, and there were fans there. I had all the Cleveland Mafia on last week before we won, and they're opening Ohio to 6,000 fans, and where they are, Jacksonville, the other day. Luke, we only had one seat in the press box last week, Marks, and I'm not going to fight at this particular point about, I mean, I'd love to be there, but it is what it is. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to have this experience in Houston. At some point, I probably will have it in Baltimore. I know we have Kansas City next week. Maybe they'll allow me to come. I don't know. But I watched the game in bed with my cat on Saturday, you know, and I'm one of those guys. I've missed 7 Ravens games in 24 and a half years or whatever, right? So I'm home away. You know that. How weird all of this is. But there is a step back that I'm getting on a plane. I'm coming down there. You know, McLean says he's going to find a barbecue place or a Nymphas or something from, I don't know. But before it's all over with, I want to experience how unique this is going to be. I know what it's like to land at Hobby and land at Reagan and come in and stay downtown. I know what Super Bowls look like there. I've been to 2. I know what an Oiler game looked like at the Astrodome. Thankfully, I attended one of those toward the end. So, I mean, I've had all of these different Houston experiences. I never landed in Houston and rented a car and gone somewhere for no one and sat on the roof and wore a mask for 6 hours and watched the game from that at distance and then Zoom. Like, this is going to be a whole different way of life for me this week.
Yeah, well, and everybody, you know, I flew commercial for the first time since COVID, going to the Chiefs game because I'm not on the team playing for this season. I'm not in that tier. You know, I had
You're
3
not in the
spots.
bubble. Okay,
Yeah,
right?
I had 3 spots for my entire department, and you know, I have 16 people working in digital media, social media, all the rest of it. And I just decided we need 2 video guys, and we need my sideline reporter / analyst, John Harris. So he's in that bubble, and he's on the sideline. I'm not. And I said, look, let's just go commercial. Let's travel to the games. You know, most radio crews, including the Ravens, are not traveling to the games, and they're doing it off monitors and doing the best they can that way. And I really didn't want to do that if I could help it. So that's how we're going. I think, you know, people find when they travel, and this is what my experience was, it's kind of like it always is, except you're wearing a mask. I mean, that's really the big difference as far as commercial travel. Going into it, I'm not saying I was fearful, but I just thought, what a hassle this is going to be. This is
Well,
going to
I'm
be so
not going to do it
bizarre.
unless I needed to. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be coming to Houston if they weren't playing football this weekend, right? But it's my job. I chronicle this. I've chronicled this my whole life. So I feel more compelled to do it. You know, my wife flew last month for the first time. She's a 2-time cancer survivor. She's diabetic. She put a mask on, went to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
She was on a plane 52 minutes and then went up in the mountains with her sister for 3 weeks. And, you know, was safer than walking through Baltimore for sure, right?
Yeah.
So you were all gauging what is safe and what isn't. I mean, if I felt weird about it, I wouldn't do it. I mean, and there was no reason to do it back in April or May or June, right? Now it's
Right.
more like, all right, this is probably the riskiest thing I'm going to do, and it's everything's a risk. I'm going to wear a mask, wash my hands, do all that stuff. But I'm not as weirded out about it as I thought I'd be. But what's weirded out, Mark? I haven't been on a plane since February. That's weird.
Yeah.
In this
Yeah.
point in my life, spending 8 months without going anywhere, the whole process of this is just a little different. And why I'm doing it when I know it's going to be kind of somber. I mean, Kansas City had people, so maybe, and it did have a little vibe, right? Like you're.
It had a
What's your
vibe.
experience from Thursday night? Give me your experience other than the game itself.
I mean, the game itself obviously did go well for the Texans, but once I got into the booth area, I felt a tremendous sense of gratitude because I love what I do, and the fact that we were able to get there, I just felt great about that. We're in our booth. It's not the same booth we usually get there. It was a few booths down, but they were really gracious and hospitable. And the game, look, it's a very sparsely attended NFL game. Sometimes you might see a crowd like that. Even in a preseason game, you have more people, but at the end of a preseason game, maybe that's what it's like a little bit. I'm not sure what to compare it to, but at least there was some humanity in the building, and they were happy because they just won the Super Bowl, and they're celebrating the start of the season, and there was a vibe. There was a definite vibe. And watching the games over the weekend, I thought, I get it. Like going into this whole season, I thought fake crowd noise. Come on, just get some noise like music or lasers, like whatever. But the fake crowd noise worked on TV. To the TV viewer, the experience is very similar when you're just looking at the action on the field and you hear a crowd and you see a play, and it's a TV show. The NFL
the
is a TV show.
celebration part of it too, where they're mugging for the camera, a little WWE that even like took you, they're mugging for the living room, literally, right? So it is a made-for-television production. And look, Luke went to the game this week. And to your point, I run a company where I'm merging a company. I'm launching a new website this week. So we're doing all of this amazing stuff. And Luke covers the team. So to your point, it was more valuable to have him there. But I want to feel this feeling and have this experience. And as you know, I don't have an Orioles press pass. Haven't had that for 14 years. Luke has covered about 20 of these zero baseball games. You know what I mean? Like for no one. Right. And I hope it never feels normal, Mark, right? Like I hope I don't want to get normalized to this. And, we play in Pittsburgh on Thanksgiving night, Mark. You know what I mean? Like that's and I didn't even really realize that. I haven't thought about it all summer. And I thought, man, do I want to be in Heinz Field, an empty stadium on Thanksgiving night? I'm thinking that might be one at home with like gravy and leftover, because I didn't hate the experience with my cat. But I don't know that I'm going to love the experience with you. And you said something, and I'm going to give you major gratitude for this because you just gave me a little gift, which is when I show up on Sunday up in the press box around 1:15 there, and McLean's over here, and Richard, whoever's there, Aaron Wilson, whatever it is, I should just be grateful I got there, right? They're playing football, and I can be there. So for that, I will be very, very happy on Sunday if it comes to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, I'm so glad the league is playing. And I almost felt it more as a viewer over the weekend than I did in the game itself because I'm so wrapped up in our story, our situation. Thursday night felt like this huge bowl one-off to me. And then all of a sudden the rest of the NFL arrives on Sunday, and I thought, this is tremendous. To have the league back was tremendous. Look, I love the NBA, and I watch these games, and I'm really into basketball, much more than baseball. So I've enjoyed the NBA bubble experience, really. But
you're also in a city where it matters too, right? You're in a place.
Right.
Islanders fans have been real happy the last month too, right?
Yeah,
so when your team wins, even when it's in the middle of a plague, or probably especially when it's in the middle of a plague, if you don't win, it's fun. I mean, if the Orioles were 5 games better, they'd be in the race, and we talked about that. And I mean, never knock a pennant race, right? Or never knock a playoff game, right? If you're there, take it for what it is. We didn't have sports for 6 months.
Right, but if you're like, I think the NFL, the greatness of the NFL shined through when the NFL got back, and you see that no other sport is like this, where the first quarter of a game, a touchdown is so meaningful. Of the opening game, week 2, week 3, it's all meaningful all the time, all the teams. I only root for a handful of teams, and I'm not a true diehard fan of any team other than the Houston Texans, really. So, but it fascinates me how glued I was to this experience, and I think it's great for the country, for the fans in the country, because I know there are a bunch of people who could care less maybe, but so many people do care, and I think it was great to have the league back. That's my general point here. So we're back in the season, and look, I'm hoping the Texans do better next time, obviously, but I'm just thrilled that the NFL's playing, we're off and running, and it's bizarre. You know, the U.S. Open this week, NBA playoffs, Major League
Preakness in 2
Baseball.
weeks. Don't forget the Preakness
I mean,
in
it's
Baltimore.
great. Yeah, the Kentucky Derby showed up a couple of weeks ago. I was like, what? It just feels bizarre, but let's just go with it. You know, let's enjoy it.
Out-of-body experience. I will be in Houston on the roof. And I've told people this. Marc Vandemeer, the voice of the Texans, you can follow him, Texans Voice, and on social media as well, that your press box is special because I've said it's sort of like on the bottom end of the moon, that bottom end of the sliver, if I could sit on the moon. And it really is this
You're
straight
spoiled.
cavern down, right?
Spoiled.
Spoiled what? You are or me?
No, you are, because
We have a better press
Baltimore,
box seat. Yeah,
I mean, the radio view in Baltimore is absolutely incredible. That where they put us, I could have a party in there. Like it could be going on behind me, and I could do the game and not even know they're there.
Like if Bisciotti figures out he could sell this for $1.3 million this year, you know, like they did in Denver. But for, you know, I actually sit in the upper deck in the front row, right in the middle of right next to the camera that shoots the field goals, right? So that's where my seat is. And look, I think at this point, having football is wonderful. We won. We feel good. It's 38-6. And I mean, even the Redskins won over where the Washington football team won over.
Right.
But you guys, it's a whole different thing when you go thud the first night. Now you've got us coming in. We've got Kansas City next week. So the whole notion that we're sort of slicing and dicing very, very early here in the AFC as to where the tiers are going to be. Last year isn't this year, but, you know, for now, trying to beat the Chiefs, trying to beat the Ravens, everybody's chasing Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. And certainly I think all of us look at what Deshaun Watson and, I mean, the heartwarming thing with his video and his family and what kind of person he is. I always get into that with McClain. I'll let you get into that as well. But this is a rough 10 days as you guys prepare to play, you know, one of the better teams and can't be 0-2 on Monday morning.
It's frightening, really, from a football standpoint, because Lamar Jackson, as you know, is so tough to stop. And, you know, I liken him to a one-man play-action pass, because every time he drops back to pass, what is a play-action pass, right? It's the threat of a run, right? So the linebackers come in. With Lamar, you're so terrified of him running the football that everybody kind of freezes. You know, not everybody, but enough people freeze because they don't want to let him – they want to kind of contain him. I think you got to go after him, but then if you go after him, he's going to get his. He's going to get some big plays. But it might be your best shot to try to slow him down. I'm not sure how they're going to handle him. I thought it was interesting what the other backs didn't get versus what he got on the ground. And also interesting to me was the Cleveland Browns. You're in the division. You should know this team better. You should have performed better, but they didn't. So they might have real problems here. You know, after week one, it's easy to overreact to things, but we know the Ravens are really good, and they played really well. And it might be a very tough assignment for the Texans. Based on their lack of ability to stop the run against the Chiefs, that really concerns you going into this game for Houston's cause. So we'll see. I mean, you always expect a week 1 to week 2 improvement if you had a bad performance in week 1 and you know you're a pretty good team, which at least they are that. So we'll see if they can bounce back and play better and maybe come out ahead.
Well, you know, for the Ravens to have played well in week 1 against Cleveland, I look at the competitive issues in the league, and I think Houston, Kansas City, the Ravens, these teams with the same coaching staff, you know, coming off a good year, same leadership, same group of leaders on both sides of the ball, that's a lot different than, oh, Kevin Stefanski, you know, meet your quarterback, wear a mask, do it on Zoom, send the playbook over, install the offense on August 23rd. You know, that's what we got on Sunday here. But to your point, and your eyes would be great on this, and look, I spent a lot of the weekend watching the 4 o'clock games and Red Zone and watching Al Michaels broadcast in this giant $5 billion stadium with nobody in it. But the level of play was just far better all weekend long. And you liken it to a bowl game, and you'd like to say that Alabama, or Ohio State, or Michigan, these great football teams, Texas in your part of the world, come out and in week 1, they're sort of lubed up and ready to go. They're only playing 10 football games at that level. at the NFL level, with no preseason, with no games, with no hit him with pads, and we're going to fly a team in here and have a little scrimmage for a day or two and blow whistles and wear white uniforms and nobody touches the quarterback. None of that happened, right? And in these places where they've had real communication issues and leadership issues, I find it amazing that the Washington football team did as well as they did with Jack Del Rio and Rivera over the weekend, because you know what that upheaval, you work in the building, you know what the upheaval is for every organization. The Ravens are really good at this. The Steelers, the Patriots, the Saints. There's going to be organizations that are really good at it. And then there's going to be like teams that are really behind, almost like a kid that doesn't have Wi-Fi trying to get education right now, right? Like there's 10 organizations that have really had a tumultuous 6 months above and beyond the COVID, right?
Yeah, you bringing up Washington, I thought that was an impressive opening day win in the division to get that one done like that. And Philly, they have to be beside themselves. And, the other one that jumped out to me, and it's Washington related, is Jay Gruden being the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville, which was a sneaky acquisition that I thought might make the Jags a little bit better than we thought. And they have a lot of addition by subtraction. With all the guys they've lost, maybe the culture will somehow be better or different with Marrone running the show and making personnel decisions. And so that affects the Texans, obviously. And I know the Ravens are going to play the Jags this year as well. I'm not saying the Jags are a juggernaut, but that was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, no surprise that Rivers throws for a lot of yards and a couple of picks, but that was a surprise to me. And you're right, how you handle COVID, how you handle the whole protocol thing, that does play into how you perform on the field, because you know what this league's about. I mean, think about it in a non-COVID world. They're working their butts off in May just to get a tiny little millimeter edge that might pay off in a game in October or November. I mean, that's just how the fine line, the do you catch it? It's Al Pacino, one step too fast, one step too slow. You don't get that. It's the whole speech, a game of inches, and the inches are everywhere. And I think with a COVID world, that affects them a lot more than people realize. And look, it's not a woe is me thing. I know people have bigger problems in their lives. We're just talking about NFL football right now. So we'll see who handles it best as we go forward. I thought the Texans did not handle it well opening day. It's too bad. And I'm not saying it's a COVID-related thing. They are breaking in new receivers. They got Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobbs. They have David Johnson coming out of the backfield. I think the timing isn't there just yet with Deshaun Watson and his new pass catchers. I think that's going to be work in progress, and the schedule's going to hit them hard early. But I would not sleep on this team as the season progresses, because as you know, it all comes down to those final 4 or 8 games as far as where you're going to end up in this postseason mix. And this year you get the extra team in each conference, which is nice.
My cousin lives in Katy, and she's a big Texans fan. She usually comes down to the games when the Ravens come in. I usually get her some seats up on the roof, below me, but on the roof. You know what I'm talking about, down to the left there. And I sat in those seats and had margaritas with my brother back 15, 20 years ago, whenever it was you guys came into the league. What year did the Texans come in?
2002.
2002. So it's been 2 decades now. And having star players and Matt Schaub and, your owner wanted it so bad. You got a Super Bowl in there early, and then the J.J. Watt thing happens in Hard Knock. And we've had 2 parades here. We've been very fortunate. And in Kansas City, it took them 50 years to figure it out, and it felt like the Patriots, had a run on all of that. But then you draft a special player, right? And we had drafted Hayden Hurst, and I famously sort of fell asleep with my laptop on my lap, Mark, and 5 picks later, at quarter to midnight, Lamar Jackson comes out in a green suit and a purple bird, and we're like, oh, my God, we've got a franchise player. Then that guy has to go out and do that. And you've been through a lot of that, at the other points where you draft players and it's not there. We've been as good as drafting as anybody. But the Deshaun Watson story, I want to give you a little oxygen to tell my audience about him, because you've been at this a long time. If you're going to get a Super Bowl ring and have a parade and have fun and do all those things that the Oilers and Bum Phillips talked about kicking in the door, because I'm an Oiler fan, you know that, and it still hadn't been done for your community on the baseball side, it has, but he will be the reason, right? And from afar, I want to root for him. I don't always want to root for the other team's quarterback. I still don't like Cam Newton. You know what I mean? Like, there's still quarterbacks. Still not a big Phillip Rivers fan, believe it, from San Diego, but the way he comports himself on the field. I always rooted against Peyton Manning, even though I knew he was a nice guy. But it's like wrestling. You got good guys and bad guys. Deshaun Watson's in our way, but much like Patrick Mahomes, these all seem like such good young people. And that's good for the league, especially at a rough time. But more than that, it's good for Houston and good for the Houston Texans, because Deshaun Watson seems like all good things.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because there are some guys that you just automatically like and some you don't. And watching the league over the weekend, I thought Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy is one of those guys that everybody seems to like. Does anybody not like Teddy? I mean, you might want to beat him if you're playing him, but everybody loves Teddy, and I think everybody loves Deshaun Watson. And two things that really jump out at me that are non-field related. But it's performance on the field that built this. He's so charismatic. When he came for his pre-draft visit, and mind you, the Texans had no shot at drafting him because they weren't going to pick high enough. It wasn't going to happen. He was just in for a pre-draft visit, but everybody flocks to his table in the cafeteria. He's got Backstreet Boys. They're all like, boy band crazy over him. They're nuts for him. They went fanboy completely over the top. These players that are in the league already, he hasn't even been drafted, but they love Deshaun Watson. Now, it helped that we had a few Clemson guys on the team, but it was beyond that. He has that kind of charisma. And then they draft him, and we all know what happened with his first start in Cincinnati. He won the game. It was a Thursday night prime-timer. He gave his game check to the cafeteria workers who were suffering and struggling because of Hurricane Harvey, and they were out of their homes. I mean, he's such a great kid, and he wanted to do that. Now, we shot that, but he didn't want to shoot it. We just said, please let us shoot it, because we know, you know how we are. It's content. It's going to be great for us, and he didn't even care. He didn't even care about shooting it. Now, it ultimately really helped him out.
Well,
but
you can also say you're going to
that.
want this later too, right?
Yeah, you want to save it, whatever. But it was a phenomenal experience. And I got to say, he's one of those guys that you walk around like in the hallway and he's just kind of glowing. There's just something about him when he walks into a room. He owns the room. He's got that kind of command. He's won a lot of games. He's a top comeback player in the NFL the last 2 seasons. That's a really nice stat. Of course, you'd rather just, win by 3 touchdowns, but they don't do that all the time. So Watson has just something. He's got that X factor that everybody wants, and I'm thrilled to have him in Houston. I'm so glad we finally have this guy. We got him for a long time after re-upping with him.
Well, I mean, it feels like, Kansas City's got one on you now, right? And we never got to see them back in January, have only got to see them during the regular season. We thought we were going to see them on a Monday night with a full crowd and, rain down on Mahomes and, make life miserable on third down, especially on fourth down if they try to pull any hokey pokey with that. All that's gone away. We're all sort of chasing them, right? And so to see them, and you talk about the it factor that Mahomes has now as the champion, but also Lamar Jackson as an MVP, right? And everybody in Owings Mills would tell you the same thing about Lamar Jackson, and everybody in Owings Mills would tell you the same thing about Lamar Jackson, which was like every team in the league passed on him, and now he's the MVP, and he's the cat's meow. But all of that being said, that this is good for the league, but also good for these franchises, that it does feel like the next 5 years is going to feel like what Ray Lewis and Ben Roethlisberger and, that it felt like here for us in the Steelers, that there's going to be a nice little Bermuda Triangle of NFL teams, COVID aside, and we never put that to the side, but figuring out this plague we're in the middle of. But for the league the next couple of years, we are, I don't want to say rubber stamped into January, but there's some expectation that these incredible, transcendent sort of star players are all coming together at the same time, playing a different kind of football than we've ever seen played before.
Well, it's like the Brady Manning years in the O's, right? In the early 2000s when you had those two guys going at
or
it.
Or Elway Marino and Montana back when we were younger. Sure,
I mean, this is, quote, our time, meaning their time. And I think everybody just needs to appreciate it. Everybody in Baltimore, I know, appreciates having Lamar Jackson. It's a great organization. Able to pass that torch from Flacco to Jackson is phenomenal. I mean, really. And then you have the Houston Texans with Watson. You have Mahomes in Kansas City, like you said. I just think, having done so many games against Manning in the division, where as a play-by-play guy on third down for the defense, it's terrifying when Manning's at the helm, calling signals. You're like, oh, please just get it off the field, please. It's 3rd and 8, but he's going to hit Dallas Clark down the middle.
I was going to say
something.
Dallas Clark.
I mean, just these guys.
That's a 4-letter word in my town, Dallas
How many
Clark.
of those guys would have been great players for other franchises? Now, we can have that conversation another day. Not that they were bad players at all, but, I mean, he put Marvin Harrison in the Hall of Fame and, Reggie
every time,
Wayne.
Brandon Stokely and I are close, right? So Brandon does radio out in Denver. Every time Brandon comes on, he says it's the house that Peyton built, the house he lives in.
There's no question. You've seen that place. It's a magnificent stadium. The Combine is there. It's a tremendous facility. And yes, he built it. He made football a bigger sport in Indiana than basketball, which is saying
No, I
something.
mean, Brandon means his house was built by Peyton. Like, he has a house because Peyton paid for it.
Oh, that's great. That's good. I like that.
Marc Vandemeer is here. He is the voice of the Houston Texans. You can find him at Texans Voice. Thoughts on the Ravens just out the door before I let you go, and the matchup itself? I mean, it didn't go well on your side last year. And again, this is the chase you're giving Lamar and Mahomes. Yeah. The same chase we're going to be giving Mahomes next week, either with our feelings hurt by you guys or at 2-0 and feeling like, hey, this is our little mini Super Bowl in September. But it's incredible that it's all coming together so early. And this game takes on even more meaning for you guys on Sunday.
To me, it's similar. I mean, they're different teams, different styles, but it's similar to what the Texans needed to do last week, which is score in the 30s. And, you hope you're playing tennis and you got to hold serve and hope you break them, right? A couple of times. You hope you get a turnover. You hope that you put the pressure on them, Nestor. I think that if you're playing the Ravens, you have to go toe-to-toe with them and make them have to score. It'd be nice if we scored, but we're cruising along here. They played the game very comfortably yesterday. You cannot make it comfortable for them, for a team like this. And somehow you got to get a lead. You got to get a double-digit lead at home. You got to keep it so the pressure is on them, and maybe you can force an error or two. We'll see how that goes. It's a very tall task. I don't think the Texans are where the Ravens are right now. That's like hardly a headline. But, maybe you can get there. We see stuff happen, weird stuff, wild stuff every week in the NFL, and I'm hoping we get one of those upsets on Sunday, a good moment for the Texans. And I know the Ravens fans obviously rooting for the opposite. I have nothing but respect for Baltimore. I think it's a great organization, and I just want to beat them.
In and out of Houston over the weekend for the late game. Marc Vandemeer will be there. I will be on the roof in Houston next to the Astrodome. I might even wear like an old Oiler hat or something just to kind of commemorate the moment, or maybe my wife will make me a Columbia blue and red face mask right there. I can Derek it up or something like that. Marc, I appreciate you. You're always gracious with your time and coming on and your insights, and I hope we all stay safe together. I'm not going to hug you on Sunday, but I'm going to stay 7 feet away and give you a little elbow. Something when we get up there, and I hope to see you down there on Sunday, and stay safe, all right?
All right, you too. Thanks, Nestor.
The voice of the Houston Texans. He is Texans Voice out on social media. Marc Vandemeer from Houston Texans and Texans.com. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat. We're merging the brands and the streams of WNST.net and Baltimore Positive. At some point this weekend, the merger will actually happen. New, bigger, and better. And COVID-proof. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive.